Hey everybody and welcome back. For those of you that are looking to learn to build some kind of a mobile or web app and you don't have any coding knowledge and you want to learn to build this app for free, stay tuned. I'm covering the basics in today's video. In today's video we are going to be making an app that allows you to share locations. So you can ignore all this code on the right hand side. This is just something from the browser. It's not something you need to know how to do. But the idea here is you can have basically just a simple UI that allows users to have different points, and they have this map down here, and then they will also have the ability to add and also just check out their current account. So let's go ahead and jump straight in. First things first, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now, I am going to provide this app for free for download, or a similar app. I shouldn't say this app. So if you go to the free downloads section of codelessfix.com, you'll see that there is actually an option for a chat app. So basically, you'll see parts of this will match what that chat app looks like, and that is going to be for download right here. But basically, what we're going to do is be doing something similar to this chat app as far as sending and receiving data. Now, another thing is if you go to the AppGyver tutorials section, you'll see that there is actually, if you go to this page here, you can Control F and look up how to get or how to make a chat app for free without code, and this video is going to walk you through a ton of helpful tips and tricks. So jumping straight in, the app itself is built in AppGyver. So the Firebase authentication page and the My Account page have already been built. Now, if you've done this whether you've downloaded the app from the chat app section in the free downloads, or if you watch the how to make a chat app YouTube video that I just showed you, that will show you how to build out this page here. There's not really much of a difference. I just changed out the navigation just a bit. So what we're going to be focusing on in this video is going to be the add and find places functionality. So first up is add, because you can't actually find the places if they don't exist. So what we're going to do in this page here is we're going to walk through the UI components first. So you'll see I have everything in a container. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this together very, very quickly. So you'll drag over your row, and this row has 3 cells. And if you have any questions about building out the UI, I'll put a link in the video description to a high-level AppGyver overview. But basically, we have a row with 3 cells, a button, text, and a button, or I should say a title. Then we have a container, just to add a little bit of spacing. And then we have an input field, a row with 2 cells, each with an input field, and then another container, another row with 2 cells, each with a button, a single button beneath them, and then at the very bottom, we have this container. Now, I would recommend going ahead and building out this UI. So for your container, you can go ahead and in the container, put a scroll view. Within the scroll view, have a title. Within or underneath, you'll have this container with text. And we'll go through that repeat process in a little bit. And then the last thing is add in the embedded map view. If you don't already have that, you can just go to the marketplace, type in map. When you find it, you can click it and click install, and then it'll appear in the installed tab over here. So once you have all of that built out, now we're going to build out the variables. So the app variables project and temp profile URL should already be added if you watch the previous videos I mentioned, but you can just update your profile or your project here. And for this page in particular, to get it to work, we're going to need these 4 variables. So you can go ahead and create those. Now, what we're going to go ahead and do is attach the variables to the different components. So these buttons will just open up different pages. It's not the most attractive interface, but I'm trying something just a little different. Now, this input field here is going to be tied to the value name. So you can click here, click data and variables, page variable, name right here. You can repeat the process for description, which is going to be the next option down, which is relatively straightforward, and then the same with latitude and longitude. So again, very, very simple process. So once you have added in those components and set everything up for those, added in any placeholder text, then we have 2 buttons here. Now these don't actually do anything. They're just ideas to help you with maybe categorizing the types of places or locations. Now, I'm not covering any security in this video, so make sure when you're dealing with locations, you aren't sharing actual user data or locations for safety reasons, and also make sure you're following any and all applicable laws, rules, regulations, guidelines, etc. when managing data in general for users. Now, the send button is going to be relatively straightforward. It is a single HTTP request, which you can get from the marketplace and then in the installed section. So our URL is going to be bound to a formula, and you can stop the video and type this out. I've done this in other videos. Basically, this first half is static text. It's just telling you where in Firebase to send the data. And then we're adding in the app variable project, which we changed a moment ago. Then the rest of this, which is going to create this collection called location, which if we go to Firestore database, will look like this here. And then we have the actual data itself. So that's going to be the document page name, which if we go over here would basically be one of these. Then we're going to have the post as the HTTP method, then no headers, and then in the request body, this will look very messy. So I'm going to walk you through a simplified version of this because you really only need the first couple. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove and we're just going to start off with this part here to keep it simple. So you'll see we have within our brackets, you'll see that we have fields, which tells us what fields, and we have name as a single field, and we've specified the value that corresponds to name as a string value, and it's going to be the page variable for name. So if we go over here, we'll say basically we have this would be the name, and then this would be the name, and then this would be the value associated with it. So name would be on the left, the value on the right. So for example here, we have name, then we have hey. So name is just the static text. Every time we post it, that's the value. The string value is what we're saying the user is sending, and then this is the page variable for name. Same thing with latitude, longitude, etc. So if we just sent page variables name, then this is the data that would go through. Now, if we wanted to add another value, you can just copy up to this point. So you can put a comma after the bracket and then paste in the text up to the bracket. Now, you're going to get an error because obviously you need to have a different text here. So we could type in latitude. And then when you go over to your page variable, when you remove the text name, you'll see you have latitude as the text. And then we can repeat the process, copy up to the comma, paste it in, and then you can type in the next bit of text here. So you could type in longitude, and then I'm sure you guessed, but you could here type in longitude. So you can repeat this process for all of the values and data that you want to send. So that is everything for the text there. Now, whether or not you want to continue to use this, it's up to you, but you can set up additional page layout options here just to set any type of variables when the page loads. So this will allow you to send sample data. You've specified the fields the user can fill in. When they click send, it's going to send off that data. So at this point, you're going to want to test it and look for this location section here, and then the documents here, which are going to be the name of whatever values you're sending, and then obviously checking in the fields and seeing what values are actually there. So all of these extras are basically what I was using in previous videos or previous tests. So you just want to test this out on your end. Now, once that's working, if you want, you can work to set up your container in repeat. So we will get to this in a moment, but first we're going to set up our embedded map view. So markers to render is going to be the first thing. The label, you can keep it as my marker. You can keep the data here if you're interested, and then you can keep all of these additional values. It's entirely up to you. So in this particular case, I haven't actually built out the map on this page. I haven't really done too much to it at all. So this would be the page we're on right now. So this map is just a blank map. We'll build this out on another page, but I do want to show you the values we're using. We're using the label, the data, and then mainly just the latitude and longitude options. And then lastly, the field and repeat, which we'll do in a moment because I don't really have it set up on this page. So that is the add it page. Once this is working, you know that you have your fields, and if you want, you can duplicate what we're going to do on the next page and duplicate it here so that you can list out current places. So let's go ahead and switch over to the next page. So you'll see we have find places next, and this is where things actually work. So if we go over to the Find Places tab, you'll see if we zoom out on this map, and that's just because I kept it zoomed in on a very specific area, but if we go and click on Location, you'll see it appears here. If we click on Hey, you'll see it appears over here. So it's relatively straightforward. So on this page, here's what we have set up. Same navigation as before. Then you have the following variables. So we have page variables. You'll see we have all of these: description, latitude, location, longitude, name, option 1, username. Then we have the same app variables, because those are universal for the application. And so what we'll do is we'll start off with the page layout. So once the page loads, we're going to get the current user, which should be similar logic to the chat app that was built. We're going to set app variable temp profile URL, and we are going to set it to the assigned value here. Get current user user ID. Then what we're going to do is we're going to use the exact same get record function from the account page that we built in the previous chat app video. And then we're going to set the username here to get record username. Now, I don't think this is necessary for this specific page, but it is an option if you want to keep things to make them a little bit more custom. So what we're going to do first up here is location name. So you'll see in this case, you have quite a few different options for how you decide to actually interact with this page and kind of set these things up. For me, I put location name, and the value is tied to the app friend. The reason for this is part of the chat app, and I just left the name friend. You can rename this variable if you would like. Then we're going to put in our add functionality. So get current user, and then we are going to go to the URL, and we're going to put in a formula. And you can pause the video here and copy this, but basically it's a very similar, if not the exact same thing as the link we were using on a previous page. Again, this is the same static text. This is the same project. This is the same second bit of static text, but we're just specifying location and then the location. And then you'll have an error toast message down here, or you can do the post here. So this first one is just a GET request. There's no request body. The second one is going to be this here, which again, you can pause the video if you want. Just a couple of minor variations to allow you to post this to a custom Firestore database. So the example here would be, if you were to click here, you'll see how we have location 2 and hey. When we look at this, this is the user ID, and then the text after is location. This is the URL that we're building here. It's very similar to what we had previously. Up until here is what we were just looking at for that GET request. But we're changing the document to say, okay, temporary profile URL, location, document ID, location. So basically what we're doing is we're posting this to a Firestore database that only we as a user can access, because these are our locations. And then we have the added or error message. So basically what this does is, if we are on this page here, we are adding a location to our list. And if we are on this page here, we are adding a location along with its coordinates for everyone to see. So we have that set up. Now what we're going to do is add in our divider, and then we have our list down here. Now this is the repeat that I talked about on the previous page. So in our scroll view, you'll see you can expand it by clicking on this option. We have title, then we have our container. In our container is another container, and in that container is text. And then we have our embedded map view. So we're going to do the map view first because it's very, very quick and easy. You'll see in the custom list, just like before, we have the same items, but as I said, we have the label is tied to the data variable, page variable, and then you can tie it to name or description or whatever value. Same exact situation for the remaining. So if we click here, custom list, we have it tied to name, description, and then for latitude and longitude, we're going to enter a formula, and we're just going to put number to convert it to a number, and then in quotes or in parentheses, page vars latitude. A shortcut to this, which I usually show in videos, is you can just type in number in all caps, and when you double click here, it'll automatically set it up to where all you have to do is type in a value, and you can type in page, and you'll see page vars pops up, and you just double click the one that you want. So what you'll do is you will basically just set it up to be whatever it is you want that page variable to be, which will be the latitude and longitude, and you can change other settings if you would like. Basically what this does is this will load the markers when that page variable's been set. So if we go back to find places, you'll see if I zoom out on this map, and again, you can set those coordinates yourself, and to set those, the default, you'll see as you scroll through that you have options to set latitude, longitude, icon, basically all of your general details. So you have the initial map region here. So that's going to be these bits of information. I just chose some random coordinates from Google Maps. But that'll be the initial map region, which is why I have to zoom out all the time to show these two different locations. But again, when we click on this, we're setting the variable for the page. So now that you have your container and your text, what we're doing is we're going to tell this container here to repeat, and then this text to repeat with a specific value. So we're going to build out our 3 data resources very quickly together. Now you're going to need to do some typing here, but I've done this in other videos, so you can typically grab from those descriptions. But we have our base here, which is locations. The description is locations, and it is this URL. But to the right of projects, you will need to update this. The reason I say this is your project. So you can change this to be your Firestore project or your Firebase project. Usually it appears in the URL next to the text project in between the forward slashes. It can also be found in your project settings. Now, once you have your project set up, you'll then go to the Get Collection, and all you need to do here is add in /location, add in the text documents, and then we're going to set in an ID here. This means you can use a dynamic value. So when you see the text ID, that means that you can swap it out for something else, and you'll just choose is optional and is static to match these values here. Then we're going to go to Get Record and repeat the process. Right here, is static is off, which means the ID here is going to swap out with whatever we tell it. So you can go ahead and do that. And because this is the location, you should be able to go ahead and run the test. Now here, I don't actually have a specific value, and that's because we're going to specify it. So if we go to location, you've already posted data, or you should have, because we already made that page. So we could just type in whatever that name is, and you'll see all of the values are here. So you'll see 37 and it worked. So if we go to Hey, you'll see 37 and it worked. So at this point, you can go ahead and click Set Schema from Response and save it, because that's really all that we're doing. You may want to do the same thing for the Get Collection as well. Once you've saved that, we're going to repeat the process for my locations. Now, at this point, you're going to need to go ahead and post a location here. So if you were to say hi and click add, and then you would want to go over here and see, okay, it added right here. So it is posting data. So you're going to add my locations, chats. You're going to type out this URL, replacing this for your project name. We're going to go to Get Collection and do something similar. You'll see the ID field here, and then the text location. And the ID is just brackets surrounding ID. Documents will be the key path, and then we'll put the ID here just like this. And then we'll get record, and you'll just put /ID in brackets, same thing here. And you can go ahead and run your test on the get record. And if you want to test it, you'll see we have this long ID. It's also up here directly to the right of the 2F. So if we grab this and if we were to paste it here and click run, you'll see that you may get an error. So you'll need to walk through the process to actually get this set up. So you'll see right here it says /ID. In this case, you might need to paste in the user ID and then the text location. And then you're going to need to work through and see, okay, is there anything else that I would need to change? Maybe we need to go through the get collection first. So we can paste this in here and click run test, and you'll see it's not in an array. Usually if you see this on the type of data that we're using, you can mess around with the response key path. But the general idea here is what you're going to do is just configure this and set it up to where you're able to actually perform that get record request. So in this case, when we're using ID, we can try to type in documents. And then when we go to test, you'll see the ID here. And the key thing is when you're going to the get record, making sure that this URL is something you can access. So in this case, we don't have the location section, which we need. So we would need to put basically just /location/ID. And then typically you can go through and check everything else. In this case, we would find one in here. So at this point, you would set up my locations just like you set up locations. So it's very similar like we did the get record here, and you could type in the values just like you would test for get collection and get record. You will repeat that process to match whatever other options that you have set up here. Now, the reason we have that URL placeholder is to allow a little bit of customization. You'll notice here that we have this long string of code or characters right next to the text location. That's because that's the user ID. So in this case, when we use something like that URL placeholder right here for ID, it allows us to pass through the result of the get user ID flow function, which we'll go over in a bit. So basically, you'll set up the my location, and then you can do the same thing for profile details. Now, this one you should already have from the previous video on how to make a chat app. So I'm just going to click through these very quickly, just so you can see. And that's all that there is to the data variables. Now, remember, once you have gone through and created the data variables, you need to go to the variables tab and add them to each page you're going to use them. Now, once you've done this, I want to make a quick note that I did mention the get user flow function, which is this right here. When you call this, it basically says who's the current user logged into Firebase. When we set temp profile URL, we're grabbing that user ID, which is this value here. So when this is done, and you'll see we can get the record details and get more information, that's how we're storing user-specific data. So when a user has added any data, what we can do from this point is execute this series of requests here to actually get this user, this data set up, which you should have done at this point. And then at this point, you can basically just go through and update your favorites. So you've already added your data variable. So again, I will go through these very, very quickly. Basically, we have our get request here, which is just going to be this request. And then we are posting here, which we've already gone through. So once the data is posted, you have it in Firebase. Now we can use it because we've set a schema. If you've had an issue in the past with setting a schema from response like we were doing previously in this screen, you have to get that to work in order to make this next step work for you. Or at least it'll make it easier. So we have our scroll view here. And in our scroll view, you'll see we have title, and then we have a container with a container. The reason we have it set up this way is everything in this container, including this container, will repeat. So we've stored them in another container. So this container here, we're going to click this option under repeat with. You'll go to data and variables, and you'll select the variable for my locations. When you're on the other page of the app, you'll use locations. So once you've clicked that, you can then go to the text here, and you can click on this and click data item and repeat, which will appear once you've done the previous step. And then you'll find the option username string value, or the string value for whatever the name is that you want to appear here. If you remember, I said I kept using username because I use the chat app. So I would just select this value, click save, and that's all there is to it. So here's where you'll get this item and repeat. Once that starts repeating, you'll see something like this, where every time a value is added, it'll appear in this list. So that's set. Now, the thing to note here is you can only get the values from the previous page that actually have something associated as far as latitude and longitude. So if I click on high, you'll see that there's an error because there's no data there. There's no latitude, there's no longitude. It's just the text high. But location 2 does have a value. So if I go to my settings here, you'll see I have location 2, high, and hey. And if I go to location, you'll see we have hey and location 2, but there is no high, which is why we're getting that error. So you're going to need to make sure that you're adding basically pages that exist on another page so that it can kind of link them and grab the correct data. You'll see when I click on an item here, this is where we're actually going to perform the more complicated logic. So when we click in this favorites area, don't get intimidated by this, it's pretty straightforward. On component tap, we're going to set the page variable, and we're going to set option 1, and we're going to assign a formula because it's just easier. So if you type in, we'll move over here, if you type in repeat, you'll see that you can find the string value for username or name or whatever that value is. And then you can just click space plus, and then you can type in the page variable for username or whatever the case may be. When you do that, you're basically just setting this option, which you can use later. You don't need to do that step, but it's helpful if you're needing to use this in other areas on the page. So on component tap, you're going to do a get record. You could scroll through and click get record and drag it over. And when you see locations, and then the ID is going to be bound to data item and repeat, and you're going to bind it to the string value. Basically, this means when you click on the item, like clicking on location 2, it's going to do a get record collection or get record. It's going to do a API call to the locations data value that we made earlier in this data tab, and it's going to check for the record for whatever the user clicks. Then we're going to go and we're going to add in several set page variables. You can grab these over on this left-hand side. So you can go to set page variable name, set page variable description, latitude, longitude. So we'll do name together. You can just click assign value, output of another node, get record, and here's where you just find the name right here. Then you're going to repeat the process for description, latitude, longitude. Relatively straightforward. What this is doing is when you get the record for location, you're saying, okay, get location. The user clicked on hey, get this record, and then assign this, assign this, assign this, assign this. So that's what you're doing here. Then, because you've already set up your map here, it's going to automatically update all of the data. So the ideal application from this point on, if you were to put high with 2 eyes, you'll see that it'll add. Typically it'll take a second or two, and then it'll appear in the list here. But when you click it, nothing happens. So if you wanted to add it and put high 2, and you could put hey, you could set your latitude, we'll just say 100 and 100. If you click send, and ideally if it's been configured correctly, it would send that data, and then users can now add hi to. So if we put, making sure that it is set up correctly, if we put hi to, so you would want to make sure that it posts to this collection, which I think I broke earlier, so it's probably not going to post it. But the idea is it would appear here. So then users could add it here, and it would be as straightforward as that. So the only other thing to note is this is the Find Places tab, and we've gone through the repeat variables here. You can then do the exact same thing for the add field. And in current places, you could follow the process to repeat the container in the scroll view and repeat this master list for location if you want. So the idea would be sending here creates this giant list of public locations. And then when you go to find places, this is just your local list. It's entirely up to you, however you prefer to build out this functionality, but hopefully this is enough to at least get you started and help you to better understand the basics of kind of building out something that would enable users to share things like this. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment box below, and I'll see you all in the next video.